everybody talks about work from home. You see, you can do only certain amount of work from home. Work from home in knowledge sector works, but work from home in construction doesn't work. You still have to have a construction site.
True.
There
Yeah.
still has to be labor on the site. If you're only working to make drawings, if my business was to manufacture drawings, I could have worked from home.
Correct.
But my
Okay.
business is to actually provide drawings for buildings to come up. Actually speaking, for the development sector in this country, at
Okay.
least 8 months before the lockdown, the crisis in terms of the economic downturn had started.
Right.
It was
Right.
not like most of us were doing so well in March, and then suddenly, when 24th of March, the lockdown over the country happened, everything stopped. No,
Right.
it was already
Right.
since June last year, June 2020, there was already a problem of developers. There was, I mean,
Right.
even before that, in the commercial sectors of the developers who are working had already a cash flow problem. There was already a lot of unfinished projects going for foreclosure. So it was not like the lockdown made the situation worse, it was already bad. And we knew that it
Okay.
was not going to improve. So, in a way, the lockdown, when it came, the people who suffered most, of course, were the construction labor. There was no fears or anything. We live in a rural setting. When the lockdown happened, it's not like we are in a city and we
Okay.
are used to being in a setup where you are independent. You're not dependent on a very efficient infrastructure, that there is a delivery boys and other things like that. We do most of our work ourselves. So it was
Okay.
not a big deal. And Pondicherry, as such, when it was locked down, which is the nearest town, had some amount of delivery service for food and other things well organized. So it was not a problem. But you know that it's more than a year and a half that most architects, especially young architects, are having difficulty to find a job. And if they do find a job, the pay is not even allowing them to live in
Right.
most cities. I know, for example, there are my friends whose children are architects in their mid 20s, and they get 12 to 15,000 salaries already 2 years ago. So if they were not living with their parents, they would not be able to practice. So
Would
it
be.
is
Yeah.
not like the sector was booming and architects were doing so well. And except for a few architects who are able to commercially do design build, or
Right.
the few who are in-house with large developers, most offices take at least for every person, they need to take 3 or 4 projects simultaneously running to be able
Okay.
to, you're taking a project for tomorrow to pay for the project of today. That's how we've
Today.
been operating in this country since 2 decades.
Mhm.
So in a way,
Right.
the lockdown might have affected manufacturing sector and the transportation sector and others freshly as if it's a new disaster. But the architecture and planning in this country is a sector that is struggling and very corrupt, because
Okay.
the way it's organized, the fees that are
Okay.
paid to the architects, you cannot focus on one project,
Okay.
because there is no way to put in the kind of quality work and research and the time to detail out things and coordinate with all the other consultants. Architect just throws out a design, the AC guy does his own thing, the MEP guy does their own thing, because there's no way even to sit down. So in a way, we were already underpaid, overworked, getting
Right.
stepmotherly treatment from the developers and from the contractors and the clients. So, I mean, what is
Okay.
a lockdown? We are used to lockdown all the time.
Um, so on that note, what challenges would you say you faced with the monetary flow with regards to your studio and practice?
We had already started laying off people in November, December 2019.
Okay.
because of the slowdown, you know.
Right.
So in a
Right.
way, when the lockdown came, the except for the local staff, we lay off everybody by June, because it was clear that
Okay.
even with reduced salaries of 30-35% cut, there is no way that institutional, corporate, and developer projects were going to come back into the market till
Hmm.
22-23. At the
Okay.
most, we will be doing a number of houses. And when you design and build houses, you know that it's a dicey market, you know.
Right.
So
Right. Okay.
there was not going to be an assured flow of work. So I would say we laid off more than 50% of our staff. And the
Right. Okay.
balance took about 30% pay cut. And we're still at that. We are at minimum staff with lowered pay.
Even before the lockdown started, you started laying off, you are saying,
Yeah,
and
we
you,
had started laying off because the corporate sector,
yeah,
especially the corporate sector that was involved in vehicles, or corporate sector that was involved in heavy machinery, all these manufacturing and assembly sectors which we work with, I mean, guys who were into making vehicles, because of the change in regulation, the sales were down.
yeah,
So they were already down since more than 1.5 years. People doing heavy machinery, because of the policy changes in terms of import of manufacturing, because you can manufacture something, but to manufacture that, you need machines. And
Right.
yes,
very often in this country, we need to import manufacturing machines to run our manufacturing sector. We are not making the machines that make the machines. I don't know if you get it. Like, if you want to manufacture generators, the die casting machines and other things are being imported, and then we
Right.
cast the die,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So that sector was already limping down since 2018. It was very
Okay.
difficult in heavy machinery and other technologies. The market was down, and the cost of money had gone up so high that financial institutions we're not, I mean, many of these things are done with advance loans against orders. For
yeah,
example, if you are a paint company, you know that you'll be getting certain loans. If you're a cement company, you know that there is going to be that much growth in demand, and you have several major suppliers that who will tell you, I need to have 20,000 bags of cement a month for the next 1.5 years, based on which your cement factory is running. Now, if the three or four main clients who are doing your 20,000 bags a month are not able to assure purchase, how are you going to pay for a mining equipment to be brought from Australia to come and do mining? You see?
Right. That's
imported.
true. Yeah.
So there's a whole chain of events that is connected with the development sector, from the raw material to the financial institutions who are actually supplying the money, to the cost of money, and also the fact that in many of the urban areas, between the urban management and the GST and the taxes, the municipality was having problems with land use and problems with providing infrastructure like water, sewerage, and energy. So not many developers were opening up new sites.
So, what strategies did you evolve or come up with to adapt into this situation, which was growing in difficulty?
You see, everybody talks about work from home.
Right? Yeah.
One of You see, you can do only certain amount of work from home. Work from home in knowledge sector works, but work from home in construction doesn't work. You still have to have a construction site.
True.
There
Yeah.
still has to be labor on the site. If you're only working to make drawings, if my business was to manufacture drawings, I could have worked from home.
Correct.
But my
Okay.
business is to actually provide drawings for buildings to come up,
Yeah.
which is a big difference. So this whole strategy of work from home and all that is all fine as long as we don't have to build. But one of the advantages of work from home is meetings. I don't know how much you guys have been practicing, but for example, I live in Auroville, which is about 170 kilometers from Chennai airport. So if
Okay.
I have to go to Bangalore for a meeting, getting up at 2:33 in the morning to reach the airport by 6, to get onto the flight at 7:30, reach the city of Bangalore by 10, and then you would have a meeting which is couple of hours, but actually effectively the discussion is not more than half an hour, 45 minutes, with
Mhm.
people delayed because of traffic, people delayed because they don't take it. And the worst part is that in the meetings, people don't focus on the meeting. They're busy on their cell phones. They constantly attend calls which have nothing to do with it. Because in this country, we don't have the discipline that when we are in meeting, we are in a meeting. Higher the person is in the food chain of making a decision, less focused they are in the meeting itself. They're more focused on their cell phone,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You
Right.
would spend about 6, 7 hours in the city for something that would be 15 hours of useful interaction. Then you'd get back 2 hours drive if you're lucky during peak hours, but most probably 3 hours back to the flight, and then 2.5 hours drive from the airport, and you reach back home at 3:30 in the night. So you've spent about 26 hours for a half an hour productive communication to take the project forward.
Mm.
And everybody sits around, and because nothing much gets done socially, they have to talk, and they say, yeah, kya kare, kya, they will start talking random things like, do you think we should move the door there? It's got nothing to do, but it's filling space time, because people are uncomfortable to sit waiting for the big boss talking about nothing, no? So they
Right.
make conversation. Then the MEP engineer will say, you know what, I had a new idea of taking my pipe under the floor and hooking it over my ears and bringing it back into the floor. So then that becomes a new input in the design, and then you start changing. So basically, because of unstructured, unfocused meeting, a lot more changes happen just to fill time. So the
Correct.
advantage
Okay.
of the pandemic is that because we do it over Zoom or Team or whichever one, you can't, like, three of us are there. How long can we stare at each other's face? So we stick to the matter. We
Right.
don't take cell phone calls.
Mhm.
So something that takes 45 minutes takes half an hour, and I have not moved from my home. So
Okay.
my carbon footprint, my time is more effectively used. So when it comes to coordination and decision making in development, design, and planning, the
Yeah.
pandemic has been fantastic. It has obliged the professionals and the consultants in this country to be taken seriously by the developers and clients, because they have to sit in front of a screen and focus. They don't just lounge around a boardroom asking for this one and taking that call and other things. So that has been a good discipline. Of course, once we start traveling, they'll all go back to good old days, because, kya
Right.
kare, hamara
Right.
culture hai.
Right. Did you have coordination issues with your studio staff, and how did you resolve them? How did that
No,
be
we didn't work for
influenced?
2 months. From mid March to mid May, we didn't work at all, because if there's no
No, it
construction
was
site
zero
going
work.
on, there was no work, you
Okay.
know.
Right.
And then
Right.
in mid May, we started working in the office. That's it. And only change that came about is that instead of 6 days work, because of the lack of sufficient work, we work 5 days a week, which is good. Everybody gets more time to do other things. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Now, ma'am, would you say that there is a need of a new methodology of work and coordination, since we are slowly beginning to resume work and office?
It doesn't matter what I think, because the day things will open up, being who we are, we will just go back to what we were doing, because there is an issue here, which I can say, in terms of a metaphor, it's like the roads of India. The way we work in India is like the way we drive in India.
Okay.
Half the people don't know what the rules are,
Mhm.
and even if they know, they don't care about the rules. Everybody wants to get ahead of the game, whether there is a game at the end of it. It is all, it's like, what I would say, it's each person for themselves. Even in an office, I've seen even in the corporate sector, there is not a feeling of an organization, a team, ethics, rigor, discipline, outcome, vision, all these things. These are all put on PowerPoint presentation and on the walls of the entrance foyer of buildings. But actually speaking, as a country, we have yet to learn how to communicate effectively and
Okay.
how to actually strategize and focus. I mean, we take pride in this country about the number of hours we spend at work. Output is unimportant. Man,
Okay.
I was at home in the office till 12:30 last night. This is said with pride, as if
Okay.
it is an achievement. But I have seen when I've been in offices in Delhi, Delhi is the worst, I must tell you, of
Okay.
Bombay, Bangalore, and everything. People come in at 10:30, 11. By the time they actually sit down to work, it is noon. Because by the
Okay.
time they
Right.
the pani piya, chai kiya, ye kiya, wo kiya, ye kahan hai, all that will go on by the time. And then there's lunch break becomes another chaos. And they don't start work till 4:35.
Okay.
And
Right.
then they start work. That's when the meetings happen after 5 in the evening. The
In the
client
evening.
meetings happen then, the MEP meetings happen then. Now, there are two problems with this. One is that women are obliged to go back home early because they might have families, there's public security issues.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't get involved, they cannot be involved in decision making. So very quickly they're sidelined. Second thing is that men who want to be with their families cannot be because the other idiot is staying longer. And if you want to get out on the top of the food chain, you're obliged to hang out there. And if you
Okay.
actually tabulate how much work is done, it would not even be 4 hours. But they have spent 8.5, 9 hours in those rooms using energy, wasting time, equipment, operating costs for
Right.
very little
Right.
output. We
Okay.
talk about the biocapacity of this country. We are consuming 2 times the biocapacity of this country presently.
Yeah.
But our output
Right.
is minimal.
It's minimal. Okay.
Not
Right.
even minimal, it's perfectly useless because even whatever output is there, I mean, as architects, you design, you discuss with clients, you do all kind of things. And what does the client do? After they've seen the drawings, they'll say, actually speaking, I know what I would like to do is put my living room in the basement and I put my machinery on the first floor. Because
Okay.
there's no
Drastic
respect
change.
for
Right. Mm.
the design component of the work. For them, it's a drawing. For them, the knowledge of how things go around into it and how things are connected and how it functions, they have no respect for it.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's the same in every sector. You know,
Mm.
so what is going to change? You think after the pandemic, suddenly we will all have a functioning left brain?
Okay.
We never train our left brain. A left brain is analysis, evidence-based decision making. Our left brain is not developed in this country because our
Okay.
education system teaches you only two things. I'm sorry to lecture you, is how to pretend that you know, because even when you don't know, saying, sorry, ma'am, I don't know, can you explain again, means you're the stupid person. To admit that you didn't know, to get to know is not part of our cultural education.
It's
To
not
say,
part.
मेरे को
Okay.
समझ में नहीं आया, means you're the pappu of the class,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So you will never admit to ignorance, so you will never learn.
Hmm.
They never learn.
Second thing is, you will never actually learn to learn. You will only learn to pass an exam.
Would you perhaps point out at a few learnings that you feel you can take away from this lockdown phase?
I would say there are two learnings that I have on a personal level.
Okay.
One is that I realize that we can do a lot less work,
Okay.
even though the fees would be a lot less, by scaling back all kind of things in our lives that we thought were necessary. The lockdown
Okay.
has provided us with the perspective to show at least 40 to 50% of the expenditure incurred within the office or in the domestic setup are not essential for life. All this eating
Right.
out, entertainment, recreation, all this buying of clothes and shit like that that most urban dwellers do. I mean, if you take a unit of 10 as a salary of any of my staff who live in the city, in the town of Pondicherry, because I don't live there, out of 10, 4 goes for rental,
Okay.
right? And
Right.
at least 3 goes for food and healthcare. So 7 units are already spent out of 10 units. The other 3 units, what they're doing is they actually invest in all kind of things like EMIs paid for cars, this, that, and everything. And plus, then they take other EMIs for their holidays, and then they take more this to have marriages and stuff like that. So 3 units out of 7 is what people realize they don't really need to spend. That socializing, like I remember the last marriage, one of my friends said that as there were only 50 guests involved, he told me it was really nice because usually it was a 3-day event in Ahmedabad.
Okay.
You'll go because otherwise you don't, and you are forced to stand there. You never socialize because there are too many people, 2,000 people running around. You don't have a conversation, nothing. Everybody is hassled. There's a traffic jam, overdressed, overfed, overdrunk. But
Right.
when it's a 50-day, half-day event with only the close members of the family, not only the expense is down, that actually people refine their community and
Okay.
refine people that they care for. So the pandemic has, at least for the people who are not living on the edge of survival, like 40-45% of the urban dwellers, let's talk about the middle class. They have found that a lot of the imitative consumerism that the middle class was being forced into to make them feel like they were up and coming with disposable income if they wanted to be upper middle class,
Okay.
that idea has slowly dropped away. Like you have to be
Right.
seen, you have to
Mhm.
shop, you have to do things, you have to post on Instagram कि you went and climbed that bloody mountain, so that 10 more people feel कि हम तो कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं अपनी जिंदगी के, हम भी जाके एक पहाड़ चढ़ जाते हैं. You know, this kind of imitative consumerism that was actually being driven by the global economy to profit off whatever we could earn, that has been put under question by a lot of them because they realize that they can still spend time and still have fun and just meet their local friends. They don't have to drive 5 hours from Bangalore to Auroville to come and eat some pizza here and then drive 5 hours back, you know, and just then post some picture on Instagram and Facebook. Humne pizza khaya, you know. So that is one good thing. And I feel that because I live a life which is very, very minimal because I live in a place like Auroville, which is semi-rural. And I would have friends and ex-schoolmates and this and that coming, and they would after 24 hours say, "Yeah, तुम लोग करते क्या हो यहाँ पे social life के लिए?" I say, "I read a book. I talk to people." यार बस रोज रोज क्या करते हो? हम रोज रोज कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. वो रियलाइजेशन लोगों में आ गया है कि घर ऑफिस से घर आए तो कुछ करना ही पड़ेगा, उसकी जरूरत नहीं है, and
Right.
the second
Okay.
realization that people have got is they've got to know their families, you
Families.
know
Okay.
and I realized that it has changed a lot the attitude of the younger generation, especially because when you run an office like I do, and there's a lot of people in the office who are below 30, they have kind of started to have a longer attention span. Because the
Okay.
problem is that most people don't read, no matter what age in India. Reading habit to hai.
Okay.
And with social media, you just swipe. You read 2 words here and the bottom, 2 words in the top. As an editor, people don't read through text.
They
People
don't.
don't know
Correct.
how to read text. When I've done exercises with my interns where I give them a 200-word document, say, okay, read it, which take 3 minutes, and now describe what you have read and give me your thoughts on it. They have no clue because they can read a few words here and there, but to actually read an entire paragraph, comprehend it, and relate it to the next two paragraphs is out of the scope of brain development.
Mm.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So
Right.
now, because there's always instant distraction between sitting in a restaurant and swiping your cell phone screen, or doing something with your cell phone, half listening to somebody else, and this and that. So, this distraction that you have, where you can just focus on three different things all the time and never actually question whether it is because you don't want to focus or you're unable to focus,
Right.
because
Okay.
people give it a fancy name of multitasking, but it actually means, somebody with attention deficit disorder, right?
Okay. Okay.
And I've seen a lot of the young people have realized, if when they can't go out and there's not much happening on social media because nobody's posting climbing a mountain,
Mhm.
how many photos of the pickles of your mother that you made and all that can you post? They have started to look at other venues. And I'm just hoping that few of them have started to read, few of them have started to think, which is already, they started to think like, why is it that the politicians are saying this? What is happening in this country in terms of the migrant labor? What is the effect of the banking sector on the wages of the country? They have started to correlate, because politics
The picture.
was
Right.
not in
Right.
the realm of architects. Most architects don't think sociology, politics. Environment for them is green building. Uske aage piche kuch nahi padna, like how many windows you put is making the green building.
Okay.
So the younger generation, I think this forced isolation has obliged them to look at other things besides just their Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, no?
Right.
And I'm
Okay.
hoping it lasts. I really hope it lasts. Yeah.